What if I told you the only thing standing between you and the greatest night of your entire life was to just leave your inhibitions, your anxieties, your senseless need for control at the door and just go out and live it? And also being able to drink somewhere between 30 and 60 drinks without keeling over, and also being able to walk around alone as a young woman in your city at 2 in the morning. Hard to say which is more fantastical for the average American, but it's not really what the movie's about. The Night is Short, Walk On Girl is a 2017 film from director Masaki Yuasa, based on the 2006 novel by author Tomohiko Morimi. It's one of my absolute favorites, and not just because it's about drinking. It's also about love, which is my second favorite thing. It's an interesting structure for a story in that while it does follow a 3-act structure, it feels much more like 2 separate stories with 2 sides each, expanding and contracting in either direction from the same point. It sounds weird, but if anybody can do it, it's Masaki Yuasa. The film follows a pair of college students over the course of one very strange night that starts at a mutual friend's wedding and takes them all over town on a very, very different pair of journeys, almost exclusively because of their wildly different mindsets, one of complete freedom and the other of complete control. Our 2 unlikely heroes are this unnamed guy who exists only as senpai and his corresponding kohai, whom he is madly in love with. So naturally, he takes this opportunity during a celebration of love to ask her on a date, right? Don't be fucking stupid. He does what we all did in college, manufacture an absurd series of coincidences to trick her into thinking she's fated to be with him. Guess who has the good night and who has the shitty one? This is a story about fate, and how it does not exist. The plot kicks off in the middle of this wedding when the kohai has an epiphany of sorts, to leave the wedding and go out on the town, letting the night take her wherever it might, to plow forward, determined to enjoy herself and drink a lot. This whole movie happens mostly because the wedding has a bad bar. Let that be a lesson to those of you planning your own weddings. The problem is on the other side of the wedding, where senpai is sitting with his 2 pals, Culture Festival Head and Don Underwear. Put a pin in that. Tonight is the night he confesses his feelings. He only needs one more fate coincidence to achieve critical mass and convince his kohai that they simply must be soulmates, but fuck, this girl is hard to catch up to. She just keeps walking on, so to speak. Boo! This is a story about 2 distinct nights, had by 2 distinct people, but in the same places. See, here's the thing. Control is an illusion, and that's a strong theme, but not strong enough for Masaki Yuasa, who hates subtlety like he loves floppy animation. So as the kohai who lives life in the moment to the fullest, and with eyes that sparkle and drink in experience like endless wells of innocence and wonder, must have the night of her life, so too must the senpai, who literally just wants to tell this girl he has a crush on her, get repeatedly stripped and slapped around like a rag doll. Not because he deserves it, but because he doesn't have the gall to be sincere and vulnerable. So basically, the same as deserving it. The first 2 acts of the movie are a sort of a game of cat and mouse, but not normal cat and mouse, more like Tom and Jerry cat and mouse. Jerry goes on a thrilling adventure, making friends, drinking like there's no tomorrow, the life of every party she walks into. While Tom chases her around and gets his shit packed in by dogs and people and sometimes other cats. Kohai immediately impresses the local barflies by politely punching a lecher. Side note, never ever punch someone with your thumb tucked in. That's how you break it. Anyway, she parades around town, hunting for the infamous rich curmudgeon Rihaku who hoards all the best liquor, and she beats him in a drinking contest, and she goes to the local book fair in search of a childhood heirloom and accidentally busts an immoral price-hiking ring of collectors. She becomes the lead in a guerrilla theater production written and directed by Don Underwear, who of course is looking for his own fated love whom he met a year ago on a different play, but actually it was the Culture Festival head in drag. Let's back up. This is a story about fate, in that because it does not exist, It does not wait for you. And in that it does not wait for you, you can't chase it, get ahead of it, or in the case of this dumb idiot right here, try to create it from nothing. Luckily, he only tries that once. He gets kidnapped and has his underwear stolen by Rihaku. After that, he immediately moves on to God's Eye surveillance. See, while the Kohai and a significant portion of the rest of the cast are carping diems around town, walking on, shrinking their collective world and making connections, there's a whole secret police operation going on at Kyoto University. It's the Culture Festival, but the celebrations have essentially run riot and taken over the entire entertainment district, thanks in part to the magnetic personality of the Kohai, and in part to the Codger of Monte Cristo, that guerrilla theater production written and directed by Don Underwear, who again thinks he's looking for his fated lover, but is actually looking for the festival chairman who was in drag once when apples fell on their heads at the same time. You still with me? Of course you are, this is classic romance. As a favor to his friend Senpai, the festival head abuses his power to help manufacture fate, starting with the book festival, where the children's book Kohai is looking for just so happens to be on sale by Rihaku the Collector to the winner of what else but a spicy food eating contest. This is more or less how the whole first 2 acts of the film go. An unstoppable force of aimless will against an immovable wall of neurotic micromanagement. Who's going to win? The force, the will, every single time, because no amount of research or plotting and scheming or arguably stalking can contain the gravity well of chaos that is a college girl that really wants to party. Senpai can't outmaneuver her, he can't beat her at her own game, can't really even keep up with her as long as he keeps trying to wait for everything to be perfect. The answer is always action, even if that action reeks of desperation. This is not so much the climax, but the turning point of the film when it starts moving backwards through its own theme. Senpai, officially out of time and ideas as his crush is now set to kiss Don Underwear on stage for the play's finale, turns even on his own friend in a desperate effort to take Don Underwear's place as the lead. たまたま通りかかったもんだから先輩私が主役この芝居の首謀者 I can't believe the devil is so unforgiving I can't believe everybody's just ad-libbing. It's an absolutely fucking bonkers scene that ends not with their payoff, but Don Underwear's payoff. It was his director who was always in love with him, and thanks to conveniently timed raining fish, let's not get into it, he gets his happy ending, and to change his underwear. It's not really even that payoff that counts though, not for our heroes. What matters is this right here. 私が惚れたのは顔形でなくリンゴが跳ねたそんなご都合主義あるか早くきっかけを早く音楽をダメ降ろさないで Imagine you're Senpai. You know how stupid you've already been. Now, you're watching these 2 idiots almost kiss for no reason but a bizarre coincidence a year ago, when true love has been sitting on the sidelines this whole time. Surely, if nothing else, this near miss would set your priorities straight. Maybe it would have, but this is also the scene where what's left of the cast gets sick. This is a story about fate, and how it exists in the strictest sense. Because what happens, happens, and what does not was never going to. I'm going to tell you a story, a true story, a love story. I met Mrs. Puppet in college, my freshman year, but just like these 2 lovebirds, we weren't quite ready for fate. A few years and several much worse relationships later, suddenly we were. I was out with friends who were trying to cheer me up about a breakup when I got a call. Not from Mrs. Puppet, but from another friend of mine who had had a blowout fight with her own boyfriend earlier that night and needed support, seemingly more than I did. So I left my own little pity party and went over there and sat on the curb with her. We had a long conversation that made me realize, finally, what I had lost. And I had a very, very dumb thought. Maybe I should call her. Mrs. Puppet, meanwhile, was at the premiere of Avengers Endgame, during which her date, and I cannot make this up, stood up in a packed theater to yell at children for being too loud. Gentlemen, as a pretty big nerd, I can assure you, your crush will not find that attractive. That's how we got back together, for good. I had a very strange but good night, and she had a very strange and very bad night, just at the right time. And if any one puzzle piece was out of place that one night, none of it would have happened. Who's to say how different life would have been then, but that's kind of my point. Who the fuck cares? The third act of The Night is Short, Walk On Girl takes place as the night is coming to a close. It moves backward, unraveling the theme and daring to question its own thesis statement. By the time the play is over, the entire cast has a truly nasty cold spread throughout the town by exponential exposure. Everyone in the cast, except, of course, the Kohai. She journeys from one household to the next, checking in on all her new friends, having the night put into perspective for her. It's a strange thing to turn around and see your own wake, and it makes her feel a little lonely in a way. See, the thing about walking on, pressing forward, never stopping, is that nothing ever happens to you, because you're the catalyst, the thing that happens. Meanwhile, Senpai lies alone in bed, sick and ashamed, having an existential crisis. Everything he did, everything he suffered, and for what? Right back in the same place he started. Maybe he never moved at all. Maybe this is what happens when you waste your life living in the future, in the theoretical, in what could or should be, instead of what is. The Kohai learns about her senpai's escapades from the festival head, but before she can go to him, she has to visit Ryaku, who started the illness. His loneliness and nihilism are nothing short of a curse on Kyoto, and only she can stop it. She goes to him and regales him with the story of her night, explaining to him how he too is connected to all of them, for better or worse. And in doing so, she realizes that to constantly move forward makes her no different than him. Whether you never leave the starting line or constantly move the finish, you'll always be alone. And to be truly alone is the same as to not exist. The Night is Short, Walk On Girl is a story about fate, and how its existence is merely a matter of perspective. Life happens, and you live it, one day, or in this case, one night, at a time. All of us are stuck somewhere along the spectrum of looking too far ahead or not looking at all, but choices, as they are, when they happen, and why, are what all connections, and by that nature all stories, are ultimately made of. The film ends with the senpai and Kohai weathering the same metaphysical storm of anxiety and loneliness, and I think this cowboy is supposed to symbolize libido. It doesn't matter. They do it. The senpai wakes up, recovered from his cold, and before he has a chance to fuck it up, he asks his crush on a date to a used bookstore. It's simple. It's perfect. It's fate, if you believe in that sort of thing. The world is very, very small, and exists in tiny, crystalline moments that hang in the air for periods of time so short that if you blink, you will absolutely miss them. They have to be greedily snatched the instant they become visible, but that's okay, because any given one of those could change your life for the better. The night is always short, but you are only one ephemeral connection away from making it infinitely longer. If it's not clear, the point of this film, and by the extension, this video, is that you should live with intent and be unafraid of making mistakes. Not that you should specifically call your ex. I'm not telling you to call your ex.